Hello, my name is David Birnbaum. I am acknowledged to be one of the world's foremost experts on the global garment industry. I have worked in the course of my career with just about every group. I started working in factories, then managed factories. In the course of my career, I've built 11 factories, both in Asia and Latin America. I've worked for customers, the importers, the brands. I've worked for the major factories. I've worked for governments. I've worked for international institutions such as the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the International Trade Center, which is a joint venture between the World Trade Organization and the United Nations. I have never worked for an NGO. On 15 July, I'll be holding a webinar on compliance. Why it has failed, what steps we can take to make it a better future. Compliance dates back some 30 years, when the customers imposed minimum standards on their garment factory suppliers. This included minimum wages, minimum age, worker rights, working conditions, and worker safety. From the beginning, compliance was flawed. First of all, it was based on the local regulations and labor laws, which meant that compliance standards differed from one country to another. More importantly, while everybody jumped on the compliance bandwagon, including the customers and the factories and the governments of garment exporting countries, very few took it seriously, with the result that compliance never gained the importance that we give to specification. For example, assume that you are buying men's shirts. When you place the order with the factory, you give them a list of specifications. For example, size. I want the length of my sleeve to be 82 cm as measured from the back of the neck to the end of the cuff. Fabric. I want the fabric to be 100% cotton, combed, double mercerized. Import regulations. I'm shipping my goods to Germany, and therefore we cannot use azo dye stuff, which is unacceptable to the German government. And let's add a fourth, that I want everybody in the factory to be working no more than 60 hours a week. If you take the first three standards, they have real meaning, because if the factory ships the goods with the wrong size, 80 cm instead of 82 cm, or the wrong fabric, 100% cotton, semi-combed, single mercerized, or ignoring import regulations that the garment has azo dye stuff, the customer will stop the order when it arrives in the home country and probably never do business with the factory again. Actually, the people in his buying office in Asia who are responsible will most likely get fired. Let's compare this with what happens with a 60-hour week. Imagine the inspector comes into the factory at 2 o'clock in the morning and sees people working. And he goes to the factory manager, you can't do this, you must stop. And the factory manager looks at him and says, drop dead. What does this young man do? The man is probably 25 years old. He's been working for the company for maybe 2 years, and he knows his management's not going to back him up. So invariably he walks away. And this means that what was once flawed becomes corrupt, because regulations and law are not flexible. If you go from a 60-hour week to a 65-hour week, you've broken the regulation. There is no difference between going from a 60-hour week to a 65-hour week and going from a 60-hour week to an 80-hour week. In both cases, you've broken the regulations. If the customer has not taken action, the result is that you are giving a license for people to go far beyond anything they ever imagined they could get away with. There is a second problem, which is even greater, and that is the myth of cheap labor. consumers, customers, and even the NGOs are told that if you want cheap garments at retail price, you must accept child labor in the factory, people working 16-hour days with no day off. This is fundamentally untrue. First of all, labor rates have very, very little to do with the retail price of a garment. For example, a shirt that is sold at Gap at $40 has about 30 cents worth of labor, less than 1%. If they doubled the labor rate to 60 cents, it wouldn't make that much of a change. More importantly, labor rate is of secondary importance compared to productivity. If you could increase productivity in the factory by 25%, which in these countries is relatively easy to do in a very short period of time, the savings would be such that they would be greater than the total labor costs, even after you gave the worker a 25% increase. The reason for this is that the overhead in these factories can be 6 times labor. For every percentage of productivity increase, you get 6% savings in productivity. 2012 was a wake-up call to the compliance world. In Bangladesh, the Tazreen factory burnt to the ground with the death of 117 workers. In early 2013, the Rana Plaza building collapsed with the death of 1,170 workers. Importers rushed in to provide assistance, to rebuild the factories, to make sure they were safe, and to offer compensation to the families of the dead workers. As good as this was, they did nothing to aid compliance. Think about it. The Tazreen fire was not the result of lack of aisles to exit. It was not a result of the exit doors being blocked. The Tazreen disaster was brought about because supervisors insisted that the sewers stay at their machines while one floor below the factory was burning down. The Rana Plaza disaster, the building collapse, was because the building material was of an unacceptable grade. You cannot expect the customer to come in and take borings of the wall to make sure that the factory is not going to fall down. Terribly, all of the help that the Europeans are giving to Bangladesh fail to take consideration that compliance has not changed. You still have endemic child labor. We still have people working 16-hour days. We still have people working with only one holiday a month. We still have wages at a level so low that people cannot even have sufficient food for nutritional purposes. This is the problem we face. On 15 July, I will be holding a webinar, not only to explain the past problems, but also what we can do to bring about a better future. This is also an opportunity for you to ask the questions that you've always wanted to ask and now receive reasonable answers. I can assure you that the future of compliance is in our hands if we only make the effort to go forward. If you are a student, if you are a garment professional, if you are a member of the interested public, this is your chance to understand and make changes in the global garment industry. Thank you.